Hello, everyone.
Good evening. We're just waiting for the chair.
Good evening, everybody.
I was just about to ask, is there a problem with the sound?
Good evening. We're just waiting for Councilwoman Walsh to enter.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I apologize for my lateness. Are we ready to go, Wendell?
Stand by, Madam Chair.
Okay.
for-
I really do apologize. I had it down for the wrong time.
Madam Chair, you may begin.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Wilmington City Council Public Safety. Committee. This evening, we have quite a few things on our agenda, but we're going to start the meeting by taking the roll call. And I do apologize to everyone who has already signed in for being late this evening. My name is Loretta Walsh. I'm the City Council member at large, and I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee. Can I have the rest of the folks? Councilmember Spadola, are you here?
Present.
Councilmember Dixon,
Present.
Councilmember Gray, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Congo,
Sorry about that, present.
other council members who may be here.
Councilwoman Brigida Fields, 5th District.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Shanae Darby, 2nd District.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Yolanda McCoy, 6th District.
Thank you. Okay, we'll get rolling. We have quite a few things on the agenda this evening. Chief, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Chief
Chief Robert
Tracy?
Tracy. With me tonight, I have Inspector Cecilia Ash, Inspector Charles Emery, Lieutenant Paul Cyber, and Director David Karras on the Zoom call.
Thank you. Because of the resignation and retirement of our fire chief, the first agenda item was taken off of the agenda this evening and will be addressed at the next public safety meeting. The same question that was requested by Councilmember Darby will be answered by the chief at the end of this agenda. So Chief, the first ordinance that we have to address this evening is being done by Councilmember Spadola. Would you like to address your ordinance, Councilmember Spadola?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everybody. I'm James Spadola, City Council at Large. Very pleased to be with everybody today. Very happy to introduce this legislation. This is something I've been writing and speaking about for years. I think it's long overdue in the criminal justice realm. And a lot of people think it's already outlawed in Delaware, but there's nothing on the books banning police quotas in Wilmington or the state of Delaware. So happy to do that with you all, ideally. First off, let me just touch on what a police ticket quota or arrest quota is. It could be something that's done formally by the chief of police that says, officers, you need to make one arrest a day. It could be one traffic ticket, could be one DUI, could be one felony arrest. It could be any sort of arrest that you could think of. Informally, not coming from the chief, it could come from a first line supervisor, somebody who's looking for a promotion, somebody who's looking to get his officers to be proactive, or not proactive, but make arrests. There's a big difference, and push them to make those arrests. And I don't believe Wilmington Police Department has a quota system at this time, but there will be a time, unfortunately, when Chief Tracy leaves us, when we're not here, when the mayor's not here, and this is something that we can do, to make sure we never have a quota-based policing system, which is all about making arrests, as opposed to a community policing based system. And this legislation simply prohibits that, prohibits it coming from any member of the police department. I think it's quite simple, and I hope we can take the lead in Delaware and ban them in Wilmington, and ideally take them to where they are a problem in other parts of the state. So that's all. That's the legislation in a nutshell, Madam Chair. Happy to field any questions or open it up for discussion.
Councilmember Spadola, what would the punishment be if you did discover this would happen?
Sure. So the legislation currently doesn't have any punishment attached to it. I highly doubt the AG's office would ever prosecute a police officer for instituting a quota system. But ideally, having it on the books as a law would prevent that situation from it ever needing to be enforced. in the first place. It's something I'm happy to follow up with the law department about. But also, Madam Walsh, this also, another thing this legislation does is it, everybody in the community wants officers to focus on solving the problem. Sometimes that means making an arrest, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes making an arrest is the easiest thing to do. Sometimes it takes a little more work, to not make an arrest, but really solve the problem. So by pushing us away from by outlawing quotas, we can ensure that we continue to focus on solving the problem and not just making arrests.
Chief Tracy, would you like to speak to the legislation?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just this legislation would prohibit something our agency has not done, something it doesn't do now, and something it's not proposing to do. So I appreciate the comments from Councilman Spadola on recognizing that's not what the Wilmington Police Department is doing. We measure our success not by tickets or arrests, but by crime rates and the results of the efforts to reduce crime and enhance public safety. Quotas can serve to erode law enforcement legitimacy, which is something I speak about all the time. That legitimacy is a core component of our training we provide our officers and is key to our efforts to forge and strengthen relationships with the community as we work in partnership to make Wilmington a safer community. I would say I'm in agreement in principle to this legislation, as quotas are not a component of our law enforcement agency. They were not before I came here, they are not now, and they shouldn't be in the future.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Any comments from members of council?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor, and I thank you, Councilmember Spadola, for bringing us to our attention again. This is something that I think the credit to you, you brought to my attention even when back in 107, before you were on council. And it was something that you've been advocating for, and it's something that you thought might set a great precedent throughout the state. So again, chiefs change. So I think the only way we can ensure that it stays as a practice in Wilmington is to make sure it's in the code. So I kudos to this this law, and I believe really the next step is we need to be looking at should Wilmington police be doing traffic enforcement at all. I know certain states, jurisdictions such as New York City, recently found great results with having a traffic-only division, and now they're actually expanding it so that all traffic matters are handled by unarmed officers. So that's a conversation for another day. But again, I think we need to be looking at these justice reform issues as a way to make sure our police have time to focus on truly violent crime. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Darby.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I'm in full support of this legislation. I wanted to be added as a co-sponsor. I have emailed to be added, so I just wanted to make sure I'm on there as a co-sponsor for this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cabrera.
Just want to be recognized that I'm present.
Thank you. Any other members of council who would like to say something? Okay, we have one member of the public with their hand raised, and that's Donald Farrell. Mr. Farrell?
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I thank Mr. Spadola and the other council people for being proactive about this. Too many times folks are reactive, and this will be an opportunity to put a lot of the misconceptions about how police enforce the law, because folks out in the public think that there is a quota, and that's how we raise money. And I'm glad to hear that Wilmington doesn't do that. And I'm glad to hear that we are.
You muted yourself.
All right, we lost Mr. Farrell. Anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Here, seeing no one else. One housekeeping thing I would like to say before we move this ordinance. If you would like to be a co-sponsor, tonight would be the night to say you want to be it, and or let the clerk know, the city clerk, by this coming Tuesday, whether or not you would like to be a sponsor, because these bills have to get printed up before a council meeting. So if council members really want to be sponsors, they're going to have to let the city clerk's office know it, and especially not on the night that the council has their vote. Hearing and seeing no one else with their hands up, could I have a motion to move it?
Motion. Second.
Okay, ordinance 21-022 will be ready for the June 3rd council meeting. Thank you, Mr. Spadola.
Chairwoman,
Yeah.
it's an ordinance, so don't we need a vote or?
That's what I just asked for, and I thought one of you was trying to correct me. So, okay, let's have a motion to vote it out of committee.
Motion to vote out of committee. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's voted out of committee. It will be on the council agenda for June 3rd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spadola. The next piece of legislation that we're addressing actually does not have a number. It's a resolution approving the police department's grant application to the state of Delaware to upgrade and replace existing equipment. Chief, are you going to speak on this?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair. Thank you. This is a grant offered by the State of Delaware Special Law Enforcement Assistance Fund, which is known as SLEAF. Like all other Delaware law enforcement agencies, we are invited to apply for these funds each year, and we are eligible right now for $123,000 in funding. We're applying to use these funds for 4 purposes: $80,000 to replace 2 unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, including batteries, accessories, and warranties to be used by the Forensic Services Division in connection with investigations and special events. $13,000 to upgrade an existing vehicle in our fleet that will be able to transport these drones and related supplies and equipment. $5,500 to upgrade X-ray equipment used by our explosive ordnance disposal team in connection with investigations regarding suspicious packages and explosive devices. And $24,500 to replace 10 existing radar units used in connection with traffic and speed enforcement. These are used in connection with our efforts that enhance vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrian safety, and to address speed and other issues reported out through the city. This grant does not require any local matching funds.
Thank you, Chief. Any council members? Councilmember Darby? Councilmember Darby's hand is down. Is there anybody else on council who would like to speak? Mr. Farrell, your hand is up. Mr. Farrell?
Yes. I would like to say that I hope that at some point we can try to find a way to legislate how a portion of these funds could be used to go back into the community to try to fund some community programs.
Mr. Farrell, we're going to stick to what the resolution is for today.
Okay, then thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Christina Kay.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I just have a couple of questions relevant to why this grant is needed in the first place. When was the last time that a suspicious package was investigated by the Wilmington Police Department? When the last time drones were used for purposes other than protests, and when these drones were originally purchased that we're already needing to upgrade them and vehicles to transport them. Those are my questions.
Dave?
Suspicious packages. I don't have the exact number, but listening to a radio, that could be almost a daily event. And then we have to take everyone very seriously, see something, say something, to make sure that we keep the public safe and keep our bomb techs safe as well. This type of X-ray equipment is critical in keeping both safe. And there's numerous calls a year on suspicious packages. I don't have the number on me, but just listening to the radio every single day, it's not uncommon to have them throughout the year. When it comes to drones, this program was started several years ago. Prior to my arrival, they've been an immense help as far as what we can do in situational awareness. Even when we have active shooters and identifying where people are, these drones can help our officers keep everybody safe, slow things down, de-escalate a situation. They're used in reenactment for traffic crashes. They're also used for searches, and they can be used for a lot of different reasons to give us a different situational awareness. And right now, these funds are coming not at a cost to the city, but actually they're coming from a grant that's no local funds being matched.
Thank you, Chief. Any other member of the public? Any other council member? This is a resolution, so it does not need to be voted out of committee to get on council's agenda. Our next ordinance is 21-026. An ordinance to authorize and approve a contract between the city of Wilmington and Graves Uniforms for police clothing. Would you address this, Chief, please?
Madam Chair, I'll be speaking on this. This proposed contract will renew a collaboration with Graves Uniform for police clothing. Excuse me. This contract would run from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. It has a possibility of 2 one-year extensions. The annual cost is estimated at $99,038.50. This cost is lower than what has been in prior years, as our Support Services Division conducted an analysis of our uniform needs and has reduced the scope of the contract to match what we will need. The contract went out to bid through an RFP managed through WPD and the city procurement team. We received 2 bids for roughly the same annual cost, but the other vendor did not bid for all the uniform needs of the department. And we have worked with Graves Uniform for at least 20 years, and they have been reliable and have worked to make sure our officers are outfitted professionally.
And this is to purchase the uniforms, is that correct, Chief?
Yes, ma'am.
Not to dry clean them, to purchase them.
This is to purchase uniforms, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Council members, anyone have any questions? Seeing no council members with their hands raised. Anyone from the general public? May I have a motion to move this, please?
Motion.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that ordinance 21026 be moved to the full council agenda for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you all. Our next item is ordinance 21-027. It's an ordinance to authorize and approve an agreement between the city of Wilmington and Accent Enterprise, Inc. for tasers and related services.
Madam Chair, I'll be opening up speaking about this as well. This proposed contract is for a 5-year agreement with Axon Enterprise for the provision of taser equipment for our department. Our officers currently carry tasers, but the equipment we have is approaching the end of its life cycle and needs to be replaced. Earlier this year, council approved grant funding to provide tasers to the recruits in the 100th WPD Academy, which was important so that our newest officers had tasers as soon as they graduated and went on patrol last week. This new contract will provide upgraded tasers for all 319 officers and comes at a cost savings when compared to a price of purchasing replacement tasers a la carte. The cost of this contract is $1,043,465 spread across 5 years in the agreement. These are important tools for the police officers. These provide an option for less than lethal weapon to be used. And in cities as close as Philadelphia, we have seen calls for all officers to carry tasers, and we've been fortunate that our officers already carry this equipment. I'm going to defer to Inspector Ash for questions on the contract, and should we talk about training, Inspector Emery is also on the call, and he could talk about the training.
Thank you, Chief. Inspector Ash.
Madam Chair, I'm more than welcome to field any questions in reference to the cost of the contract or why we're adjusting it and some of the cost savings, but the chief hit on most of that already. So I'm available for questions in reference to that.
Thank you. Council members, does anyone have any questions? Members of the public, does anyone have any questions? This is on the purchase of the tasers. Seeing no questions from either group, is there a motion to move this?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. That 00061 be moved to the full council for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing the ordinance pass through to a full council, it will be moved on. Okay, that's it for legislation. We will now have the chief do an overview of the promotion and discipline measures within the Wilmington Police Department that was requested by Councilmember Darby. Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a two-part question, promotion process and a discipline process. So I'm going to open it up for the promotion process. And if there's any specific questions, I'm going to have Inspector Emery, who oversees the promotion process in our department, to add anything with any questions that might arise, and I'll jump in when needed with your permission, Madam Chair. And for the disciplinary process, I have Lieutenant Paul Cyber, who's our commander of Office of Professional Standards. I'll give an overview and also, with your permission, have him jump in on some specifics on any of the questions. So promotion process, our department has for years worked with PSI, which is formerly EB Jacobs, who administers our biannual biennial, can't say that, sorry, biennial promotion process for the ranks of sergeant and lieutenant. It's every 2 years. The firm has developed sound processes and their approach has withstood lawsuits from all sides, employers, employees, and labor unions. Our process includes testing and interviews. The candidates stay on score, ranked, and then banded. So for these ranks, we promote from band A first. Once all personnel in band A are promoted, we move on to band B and then so on. I'm going, and if there's any specific questions, it's a two-part question. Do you want me to stay with promotions first, Madam Chair, and then move on to the discipline process, or I can give an overview of the discipline process as well?
Do one at a time.
Okay, so I'm going to stop at the promotion process, and then after we finish this, I'll get into the disciplinary process.
Now, I just have a question on the banding. Can you not promote if you don't finish the bands? Can you not have another testing period?
We have testing every 2 years, but when you create the band as a natural cutoff, that's actually by the cutoffs come naturally, and it's analyzed and ranked by E.B. Jacobs on how everybody performs at each part of the process of the test. So they create several on band A, several on band B, several on band C. We cannot move to band B until everyone on band A is promoted. And then the same with band B, we can't move to C until everybody is promoted on band B before we move on to the next band.
Okay, thank you. Council members, any questions? This is on promotions.
My hand.
Councilmember Darby.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chief Tracy. I actually requested for Wilmington Fire Department. I wasn't familiar with your promotion system. I'm more familiar with the fire departments, but in understanding the band system, once they're in the band A, and let's say there's 7 people in that band, and there's 3 opening positions to be filled. How do you select out of those 7 people in band A gets into those 3 positions?
Right, we basically take a look at some of their record, their experience, and we evaluate the individuals. And then myself, Inspector Emery, and Inspector Ash, we sit down and look at the attributes of some of the leadership skills within that band, and then we make a decision to fill those 3 spots. So usually they're not happening, they're usually happening one at a time through attrition. And we just go to the next person, and we kind of within that band, we take a look at them and rank them for their leadership experience and who would be the best fit right now taking over that position.
May I follow up?
Yes.
Yeah, so within that band, and those 3 people are selected, and you're stating that it's by record, experience, and whatnot, and you guys kind of do your own ranking system. Is that an informal or formal process?
That's more of an informal process because it's within the band. It's a managerial right on who's to be promoted when in that band for the needs of the department.
So it's more of an informal process of who gets selected for like the example I used for the next position is pretty much informally. You're saying that you select based on record and experience, but really it's a manager rights, and you guys can select whoever you want.
Within that, say you use the example, Councilwoman, of 7 people in that band. We're just using that example, which actually is pretty close to what we have. As a position comes open, we look at the needs, and then we look at the individuals. And yes, we make a managerial decision within the band, which gives us options. Not everybody can, within the bands, instead of going straight up scoring on a test and then just taking each person off that score, it actually gives you more flexibility within the test within that band to see exactly. Someone might not score as high, but probably be better suited for that position within that band at that time. Doesn't mean all of them should be suited if they're scoring that high on those tests. But a lot of other factors go in. even experience, your test score goes up because of experience that you have in the department and on patrol. So you actually get rewarded. And also physical fitness also is another reward that gets added on to that. That might put you into another band.
Yes, may I follow up? Sorry.
Yes, you may.
Okay, so with the, so it's informal managerial rights. How do I word this? So my question, so I asked the Wilmington Fire Department, how, within your time that you have been chief, how many Black officers have been promoted? Or Black police officers have been promoted, because some issues that's in the other department, I don't know if it exists there. I know for a fact it exists in the other one. So I can't really speak to this one, but how many, I would like to have it written down to tell me each year how many Black officers are getting promoted compared to white officers. What is the rate? I want to see if it's the same. And then another thing I want to hit on, I don't know, in the military, we call them like your rank, right? Different levels that you on. So when you get to your senior rank, is there also banding? Because I know, for instance, in another department, once you get to a certain level, the band system does not exist anymore, and it's all based on who the chief wants to promote. So, 2 questions.
Well, Councilwoman, it's a highly structured process to get the individuals to get to each one of the bands that they're on. And as you take a look at that, the amount of officers that are promoted by race, by gender, we can get you that breakdown from the time that I've been here. That's actually, you could take a look at even the demographic breakdown of who's in what rank is also something that was presented for the budget when I presented the budget of the department and the organizational chart and the individuals that are in there. The second question you asked about as far as banding, when it comes to the rank of captain, there is no test for the thing. It's an appointment, but the appointment, it becomes a meritorious rank. The 2 inspectors are of true appointment and serve at the pleasure of the police chief. And then I, as the police chief, I serve at the pleasure of the mayor with no meritorious protections. But when you look at all these things, it's not just lieutenant, sergeant, and lieutenant, but there's promotion for every rank. So I kind of want to make sure that when I'm sending you something, police officer, there's corporal, there's senior corporal, and there's master corporal. There's promotions within that rank. And then when it comes to the sergeants, there's within those ranks, there's discretionary promotions of master sergeant, senior sergeant, and master sergeant. So these positions all have promotions even when you're in there. We can get you that breakdown. I hope I answered your question, and I'll get you those breakdowns, Councilwoman.
Are you finished, council member?
I'm sorry, I was talking on mute. No, I was saying thank you. That I'll look forward to getting the breakdowns.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief. Any other council member have a question? Councilmember Congo?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Could we please also recognize Councilmember Congo as being here?
Thank you, Chief. How long do you think it would take to get us that data?
I should be get it to you by tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank
Any
you,
other
Ed.
council members? Anyone from the general public? Okay, seeing none from the general public. Do I have a motion to move this to a full vote of city council?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Council President.
What are we voting on?
On whether or not to move this out of committee for a full vote. Oh, my God. I'm sorry, I was ahead of myself. We have to redo something we did before, Council President. Thank you for pointing that out to me.
Okay, thank you.
This is not my day at all. Okay, does anybody else have any questions of the chief or his staff?
Okay. Councilwoman, if
Yes.
I may, I'm just going to go through the second question, which is discipline process.
Okay.
So the discipline process on this question, our Office of Professional Standards manages investigations prompted by citizens' complaints as well as by proactive administrative investigations launched by members of that department, which is supervisors in this department to make sure that we're following policy and or if there's any other behavior that needs to be addressed. Lieutenant Paul Cyber is the commander of Office of Professional Standards. And then I'm going to ask him, with your permission, Madam Chair, should there be any questions that gets into deeper detail, I'm going to ask him to jump in with your permission.
Yes, Chief. Councilmember Darby has her hand up again. Councilmember Darby?
I'm gonna put it down. I don't have any questions yet until you go through the information. Or that was it.
All right, thank you. Chief Tracy,
Yes, ma'am.
why don't you just continue?
Lieutenant Cyber, can you just quickly give an overview of how it takes to a discipline process, and then just go through it? And should we have any questions after your presentation, we'll start to field questions. Lieutenant Cyber, you're on.
We might as well do it, Chief. Everybody prepared for it. So just get it out of the way.
Sure. Lieutenant Cyber, please start your presentation.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Madam Chair and council members and members of the public. I'm Lieutenant Cyber. I'm the Division Commander of the Office of Professional Standards, referred to oftentimes as Internal Affairs. Just a quick overview of our division. It's comprised of 7 officers. It's myself and 5 sergeants and 1 master corporal. And out of the sergeants, 3 of those sergeants are investigators within the division. One of the sergeants handles primarily extra jobs, and one of the sergeants tasked with handling court proceedings through all the state courts. And the master corporal is assigned primarily here at JP20 and coordinates everything between the officers that are needed for JP20 trials. So our primary objective is to investigate citizens' complaints and administrative complaints. And to kind of give you an overview, citizens' complaints obviously are from outside our building, members of the public filing complaints. And what would be referred to as administrative complaints are from within the building. That would be supervisors placing officers on charges for various policy violations. So just to kind of give you an overview, there's, for those who may not be aware, there's several ways that you can submit a citizen's complaint. You can do that here at the police station. You can do that online through the Wilmington Police Department's website. You can submit an online complaint. And we also have a mailbox located at 8th and French on the 3rd floor at Constituent Services. So any one of those 3 ways you can submit a citizen's complaint. And normally what happens is once most of our citizens complaints nowadays are coming via the online complaint. It's the easiest. And obviously you can do that from a remote location. You're not having to come into the police station. So I will receive a citizen's complaint online, and I make contact with I review the complaint. I make contact with the citizen within 24 hours of receiving that complaint and go over any questions that I might have regarding the complaint. And then the complaint is assigned to an investigator. And one of the 3 sergeants would be assigned that complaint. And the sergeant that's assigned that complaint will make contact with the citizen within 24 hours of receiving it and being assigned the complaint. And then from there, the sergeant, the investigator, conducts the investigation. We like to have those investigations completed. We like to keep them under 30 days. There are circumstances that will go beyond that, whether witnesses or officers, maybe vacations, injuries, citizens that we can't get a hold of. So various reasons that it may go beyond 30. So at the completion of the investigation, the summary report is then compiled and it is submitted to myself, and I review the report with the sergeant, and we go over the policies that they feel were violated and which ones maybe weren't violated. And then from there, the Wilmington Police Department has a matrix. We have each classification is each policy is classified A through F. Class A being the worst of the penalties, class F being the least. So within the class of however the directive or policy is rated within the class, that coincides with a matrix of the discipline that's administered. So we look at two things. We look at the class of the punishment and we look at the reckoning period. So just to give an example, maybe an officer not reporting to work on time. And I'll give you an example, administrative and citizen-based. I'll stay with administrative first, inside. So for example, we have an officer that may arrive late to work. Their frontline supervisor would make that inquiry as to why they were late. And maybe it's something that's just handled on a division level where they're just stuck in traffic and something that's explainable. Let's say we're now having a second and third offense with an officer being late for work, and it's a consistent thing or a pattern. This frontline supervisor would then serve the officer with a notification of complaint and ask specific questions as to why they were late. And the officer responds to those questions, and then that frontline supervisor types up a report. It then funnels its way through the chain of command, through the watch commander, through the captains, through the inspectors, and makes its way to the Office of Professional Standards, where it's reviewed. And then it's again reviewed by myself, assigned to one of the sergeant investigators. And we go over the report, and we either agree or disagree as to what policies may or may not have been violated. And if they are, we take a look again, what class is the punishment and what is the reckoning period. So if you have an officer that may be a second offense within 2 years of being late, where they're placed on charges, they would receive a worse penalty than the first offense. So it's a progressive discipline. It starts out low, and the suspension time increases as the number of offenses increase over the time period. And again, the same sort of lines with the citizen's complaint. The only difference is it's the citizen filing the complaint. And to give you an example, again, a citizen files a complaint on an officer for rude and insulting language. It is investigated directly by Internal Affairs and not the frontline supervisor if it's filed directly with us. And again, at the completion of that investigation, we look at the matrix for rude and insulting language. What class penalty is it? And then we look at the history of the officer. Have they had any like offenses within the reckoning period? And that would dictate the penalty that they receive. And of course, then at the end, the citizen is given a letter. It's mailed to them, and they are notified of the outcome, whether it was substantiated or unsubstantiated, the complaint. So that just kind of, I think that may give you just an overview of how we work and the matrix that we utilize.
Okay, thank you. We do have two heads up right now. Mr. Farrell?
There we go. Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to ask this question, or these questions. The public has been asking for transparency, and I applaud this first step. I have a couple of questions, And I would like to know that what constitutes a fireable offense? If an officer is terminated, do they keep their pension? Do they keep their credentials? Or is an officer allowed to quietly resign if there are serious charges? And are they allowed to keep their credentials? And are they allowed to keep their pension? The other question that I have is, does Wilmington Police Department have a policy of hiring gypsy or wandering officers? And I ask that question is because it's related to discipline. And I know that Wilmington has had a hard time recruiting officers, particularly officers of color. And there are a lot of officers that leave other departments because they've had incidents of bad behavior. So that's what I'd like to know. And lastly, what is the policy on substance abuse? Officers are human, and they kind of face many of the same pressures that the public does. Are officers tested for substance abuse after a use of force incident? If an officer tests
Mr.
positive.
Farrell, your time's running out because you've actually asked about 8 questions.
Okay, well,
Any of them answered or?
Yes, I do have. Okay, I am about done. I would just like to know that if an officer tests positive, is the officer terminated or is the officer assigned to desk duty? Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
do you want, I'm getting 4 questions. Would you like me to go through them?
Okay, yes.
All right, fireable offenses, and if they're fired, do they keep their credentials? The answer is no. And it goes before a commission on police training to ensure that they do not keep their credentials, and they have a hearing down with the state for a decertification. We'll decertify them, but they can appeal that, and the state will make a decision, which usually goes in line with the chief of police. As far as do they keep their pension if they're fired? That's a civil service law on whether they can keep their pension or not for the time served. So those things, the answer is a lot of times yes. If it's before 20 years, they're vested in the amount of time that they've contributed into the pension. I believe policy for officers, man. As far as taking other officers from different agencies, Gypsy officers, the answer is no, we do not take lateral transfers in this police department from other police departments. I'm of the ilk that I want to get the officers fresh so they understand our method. It's a methodology of respect, police legitimacy, how to police in a city like Wilmington. And I don't want to have certain issues from a different police department that I'd have to retrain them. I'd like to get them where we can mold these officers into what we, the community and the police department, want to serve our city. So we don't take officers from other departments. And if we do take them, they have to go through the whole academy. They can resign from the other department and then come to this one. But if they resigned with some disciplinary issue, we do a background check, not only on former officers, but we also do it on every person that's coming through to ensure that we didn't miss anything in their background that would probably not make them very good candidates for police officers. Substance abuse, when it comes to possibly alcohol substance abuse, we'll look to see about getting the rehabilitation. If it's narcotic substance abuse or marijuana, the officers, if they're we have random testing in the police department. If something happens where they test for substance abuse, that's an automatic way. You talk, Lieutenant Paul Seibert talked about That would be a Class A violation, which is a fireable offense. They have the ability to go before a complaint hearing board to state their case and appeals part. But we would push to make sure that these individuals, they have a due process, that they would be put on administrative, will not be put on the street. They have a right to trial within 30 days, complaint hearing board, but it's a fireable offense, substance abuse. And then, and last question. I believe I tried to hit every single one. And I think it's coming down to substance abuse. And I'm having trouble with my last note I wrote to myself, trying to make sure I thoroughly answered Mr. Farrell's question. So if I missed something, please remind me, and I'll try to make sure I cover it.
Thank you, Chief. Christina Kay.
Thank you again, Chairwoman, for the opportunity to ask these questions. My questions are actually for Lieutenant Cyber and the Office of Professional Standards opinion or stance, I guess. My questions are, though, do all officers have the same set of standards applied to them, or are high-ranking officers held to a different set of standards, or judged differently when a complaint comes to your office? And also, I wonder the offices and Lieutenant Cyber's personal stances on Wilmington Police Department and Chief Tracy authorizing officers to violate constitutional rights of citizens by blocking public streets to primarily Black protesters, but not blocking the same streets to white anti-abortion protesters. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, we're all held to the same standards. We're all held to the same standards as far as the policy and the guides of the Wilmington Police Department.
Councilmember Fields.
Yes, I just had a question about the citizens' complaints. My question is, are the citizens' complaints confidential, and are the names kept confidential?
Lieutenant Cyber, Madam Chair, can I have Lieutenant Cyber answer this question?
Yes.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. All the names of the citizens and the witnesses involved are all confidential.
Can I follow up, Madam Chair?
Councilmember.
Thank you.
Yes.
Also, Lieutenant, I would also like to know, I know that you send a letter out to the individuals that make the complaint, but do they ever like call back or give you a follow-up or say, this is not enough, or I'm not really pleased with that? Do you do another follow-up? Like, what's the follow-up process if you get someone that isn't pleased with the outcome of your investigation?
And to answer your question, oftentimes before we mail that letter, we'll actually make a phone call. The investigator will make a phone call to the citizen and go over the findings, and they'll know the disposition of the letter prior to receiving it, and then we mail it out. But to answer your question, it's very rare that we end up with further questions. 9 out of 10 times they're happy with the results, our findings.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm done, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up to that question. So if a person puts in a claim, but they don't hear anything back, how could they do follow-up?
So what would happen, ma'am, if, well, just to kind of explain, If we received a citizen's complaint and we reach out to the citizen and we can't make contact, we then mail out what's called a no contact letter. We will provide, mail out a letter to the address that they provided on the complaint and let them know we're trying to make contact with you. We've been unsuccessful. If we don't hear back from them at that point, we will go out, we'll do a door knock, see if we can make contact with the citizen that made the complaint. And in cases where we can't, we close it out as we're unable to make contact. But your question was more geared towards the citizen reaching out to us.
It would be, Madam Chair, you mind if I follow up?
Yes, council member.
I mean, as far as like if it's a complaint against an officer, it's like from a citizen, how does that process work? If they're anonymous of putting it in, if they don't hear back, like how or what's the results of what happens? How could a citizen that may have put in the complaint about an officer be resolved?
So there are occasions where we will receive an anonymous complaint. It's in our policy that we'll investigate those if we're able to do it without the actual complainant or any witnesses that they may not want to mention. So if we're able to proceed forward with an anonymous complaint, we will. As far as if it were investigated and the findings were whether substantiated or unsubstantiated, if they provide an address but not a name, we will mail a disposition letter. But a lot of times with anonymous, we won't even have an address to mail a letter to. So to answer your question, yes, they would not receive any response from us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, council member. Council member Darby.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if we were going to hop into this, but I had questions about disciplinary, but in another focus in regards to if I can get a breakdown of infractions. I don't know if this is even allowed because I know you guys are protected by that Bill of Rights, but getting a breakdown of the infractions and then what the discipline was by race. Is that possible?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I can answer that. Right now, we would at least have to check with the human resources regulations regarding privacy and confidentiality of employee records. There might be a question. I still have to direct that to both city law and human resources to make sure that we're in compliance in what we're releasing. I just want to get back on that. And then if we can answer that, we can give you that information.
Thank you. By race and gender would be nice if we can do it. And the reason why I'm asking for that, there's allegations that in other departments that Black officers are being disciplined harsher. Not officers, but Black employees are being disciplined harsher than white employees. So I want to see if that's the same in the police department. My other follow-up question is in regards, I don't know if you guys call it a trial board. Like if you get a police officer and you have infraction against you, do you go to a board or anything?
Well, I'm going to, in the specifics of it, Lieutenant Paul Cyber is doing a great job. It depends on the amount of days. And then you can go before a complaint hearing board. But Paul, why don't you answer that before, how it gets to a complaint hearing board and then a possible appeals process after that?
Sure. At the end of the investigation, if it is deemed that the suspension time will be 2 days or less, that is what's referred to as summary punishment. So the Officer Professional Standards brings the officer in, and just give an example, a hypothetical. We're offering 2 days suspension. The officer is able to take that directly from the Officer Professional Standards per our policy and the current contract. And they then go ahead and we schedule those 2 days suspension with their supervisor. Anything beyond 2 days. So at the end of an investigation, we make a determination that an officer should be suspended for, let's say, 3 days. An officer can't accept that summary punishment because it's more than 2 days. So they have to go to a trial board with 3 captains. Now, what they do have the opportunity to do is they may not necessarily want to go to trial, but they want to go in and plead guilty with an explanation. So it's their right what they want to do. So if they go before the complaint hearing board and they go in there with 3 captains and they may plead guilty with an explanation, but feel as though it doesn't warrant 3 days suspension. And then it's up to those 3 captains to make a decision on whether they're going to go with the recommendation of OPS, the 3 days, or a different type of penalty, if that answers your question.
It does. But what?
And Councilwoman Darby, they also have an option to make a request to the police chief to get 3 outside captains from different law enforcement agencies. And then that I would review. And most of the times that they're asking for that, it's something that I've granted every single time. So they can keep it from internal captains and or external. I would have to ask other police departments to come in.
Oh, that's perfect. May I follow up?
Yes.
Okay. So for the trial boards, there's 3 captains. It's never like peer to peer, like rank to rank, or it's always 3 captains.
It's always 3 captains.
And how are those 3 captains selected? Is there a random selection, or who makes that selection?
So the Officer Professional Standards makes that selection. It's a blind selection, and the 3 captains are selected, and then an alternate in the event that one is unavailable for various reasons, vacation or just simply not available that day. So we pick 3 captains and an alternate.
May I follow up?
Yes.
All right. So with the 3 captains and the 1 alternate, when we say random selection, is that going through like a system where names are like generated out, or is it a specific set of group of people in the office of professional who quote unquote randomly selects?
So that selection process is done right here in the Officer Professional Standard, and it is all the captains are assigned a number on a piece of paper, and the number corresponds with a chip. Those chips are then blindly drawn, and they're done twice. They're drawn the first time and the second time, just to ensure that they're all in there. And the second draw would dictate the actual captain selection for that trial board.
Okay, thank you.
And just to follow, and that's conducted with at least 2 members of the Officer of Professional Standards and myself. So there's 3 officers involved in that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Council President Kondo.
Yes, thank you. About how many citizen complaints does the department get a year?
Sir, this previous year, we're at 20. If you look on an average, they're coming down. We averaged somewhere between 70 and 75, somewhere between about 5 and 7 years ago. So last year was 20. The year before that was 33. So it's a good sign that they're coming down.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to speak, follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Are you able to speak to the nature of those complaints? The average nature of them?
As far as the classification?
Yes.
I would say predominantly maybe rude and insulting language. That's a.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, that is a question, Lieutenant Cyber. So all these policies, are these published online at the White Book, specifically Chapter 8?
Yes, all the Officer Professional Standards policies are online, and I don't believe any of our material is there's any redactions within it.
Okay, I just wanted to inform the public because I know there's been a lot of great questions and some members may not be aware, or members of the public, but I know, in the 108th session, 107th session, we made sure that they were published online. So anytime there's changes regarding these procedures in future, will those be updated periodically online?
Madam Chair, Chief Tracy.
Yes.
The answer is yes, Councilman. They're updated. We review them yearly, and if anything comes up that we have to review them before an annual look, we have Commission for Accreditation on Law Enforcement Agencies that just did a thorough audit on all our policies, procedures, and seeing if we're in compliance. And if there's best practices that have changed. We also work with the State Commission on Police Training. So they're always being reviewed to make sure that we have the best practices. And then we go before an administrative board that actually gives an overall view and votes for the approval for our policy, like any other department in the city.
Okay, I was just making sure that anything that we say today, if it changes, say 3 months from now, 6 months from now, it'll be updated on the website.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Darby?
Yes, I have a question in regards to the citizens' complaints on the amount every year. Is anything being done to make sure citizens know about the citizens' complaint on how to do that? Because I don't think it's low because we think Wilmington PD doesn't have any more complaints than 20 a year, because I can think of more than 20 a year. But I just think people don't know or don't feel comfortable going through a police department to report and investigate themselves.
Councilwoman, we have the reporting out process on our end of the year report that's online for the amount of complaints and type of complaints. And we're going to make sure that we do a campaign again to make sure that we try to put it out. It's online. We're discussing it here on the Public Safety Committee right now to make sure we can educate the public and going through this process. A few years ago, actually it was prior to my arrival, they did have pamphlets educating everyone where they can go out and how they can make the complaints that Lieutenant Paul Cyber went through. So we'll look at trying to initiate that campaign again to make sure that we can educate the public and where they can go to do that, and where it's not just within our facilities here, but there's other alternative ways to make complaints if people are uncomfortable coming in to a police facility.
And Chief, if I may, do you get a fair amount of people that may call to say they want to make a complaint, or show up at the desk sergeant's office and say they want to make a complaint, and then you never hear from them again?
I'm going to let Lieutenant Cyber answer that question. Paul, the amount of complaints that you might have, people coming in or calling, to answer the Madam Chair's question.
Yeah, I would say the majority of complaints, Madam Chair, come in. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if I was muted. The majority of the complaints come in through the online reporting system now. Probably 90% of them a year come through. We're getting very few through the actual house sergeant's office now, or through constituent services.
Okay, thank you. Chief James?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for giving us the time this evening to discuss these important issues. My questions for the Chief or Wilmington Police Department in regards to the complaints. So I know you said there's about 30 complaints from this past year. And what I want to know is, how can the community, so I've put in complaints through the online forum, and just through follow-up and making phone calls, realize that the complaints never went through. And that was with extensive follow-up. My question for Wilmington Police Department is, how are we ensuring that the citizens who are making the complaints, that they're actually being submitted? Because once I submitted online, I thought that Wilmington Police Department would pick it up and take care of it. Didn't expect a call, didn't even have a notice, at the end of submitting it. It just says it was submitted, didn't expect a follow-up call or anything. And to this day, that issue hasn't been resolved. And then my second question would be, do you have numbers for the complaints directed to specific police officers? I know there's a squad, we know them in the community as Jump Out Squad, but we want to, are there a number, do you keep track of complaints to those specific groups or to those specific officers? And how many complaints can an officer get before action is taken?
Well, your answer to the first one, Keith, is that please, with that complaint, just if that hasn't been followed, let's find out what happened with that. Let's call, can you call OPS, call Lieutenant Cyber personally, or we'll get your number and make sure that he calls you. Let's follow up on that complaint to see exactly what happened to it. Secondly, we don't have jump out squads, but we do have our early warning system with police officers that we use, a case management system called IA Pro that actually tracks all our officers, any types of complaints, behaviors, lateness, use of force that we have to, within a reckoning period or a time period, if you're getting a certain amount of complaints, that's why we always make sure that the public knows how to make complaints. We try to do this at the community meetings. We're doing it here at this public safety meeting. It's online because that will affect some of the behavior that our officers out there, and then we can investigate it. So we just want to make sure that we're getting as much information as possible. There might be something that's going on personally with that officer that we can probably intervene to make sure that something doesn't happen out on the street, but make sure we can get that officer some help that they need. If something's going on in their personal life, that their behavior is changing, or their behavior is not proper on the street, that we can address that accordingly.
Madam Chair, may I follow up with a question to the chief?
Not sure how much time you have left, but go ahead.
Chief, thank you for that. And just my follow-up question is, I know that we're going to have the body cams, initiated soon, and I know we have dash cams in the police cars. Are those videos reviewed periodically or at random? And if they are police officers held accountable for things that may be said, even if they're not interacting with citizens? So, for example, if I'm on the clock as a Wilmington police officer and a body cam or a dash cam catches us saying, inappropriate things, talking about an arrest in an inappropriate manner, or talking about what they'll do in the next arrest and following up, or maybe somebody was assaulted by a Wilmington Police Department officer and didn't file a complaint. But has it ever been a case with Wilmington Police where you've seen it on video, no complaint was done, but action was still taken?
Yeah, Keith, we don't have dash cams. So this is, we're very excited about the training that's going through. Our officers have the body worn cameras that are out there. If there's administrative violations or, God forbid, a criminal violation, those things will all be investigated. And we'll make sure that where we have made arrests of our own police officers in the last few years, that we self-initiate investigations. But if something should be on film that rises to that level, it'll certainly be addressed. These things are reviewed. They're randomly reviewed. Thank you to the council that we're able to roll this out in a very effective manner, as having one sergeant and 3 police officers that in the technical resource unit, which are going to be reviewing these on complaints and also all use of force. We actually look at them. We do a review and we do an investigation on all use of force. And then now with the body camera, it's going to give us even a better view of what happened and how do we look at it and how do we move forward, whether it's unsubstantiated or it's something that rises to a level that Lieutenant Paul Cyber talked about, where there's going to be discipline and or going quite possibly to criminal charges.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you. Anyone else? Council or citizen for the chief? Okay, thank you all for that. Before we go to, we have to correct an error with council, so don't leave yet, chief. And that is ordinance number 21-027. I need to remove that and ask for a call once again for somebody to move it to go to the full council for a vote at our council meeting. So do I hear a motion?
At this time, I make a motion to move the committee item. I move to a vote to move the committee item to the full council agenda for a vote by the full council body.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 21-027 be moved to the full council for a vote at our next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Thank you, everyone, for your time, and I apologize again for this being a very convoluted day for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have a good night,
Thank
everybody.
you, Chief.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.